Two Japanese aircraft came out of low cloud onto the American aircraft carrier Bunker Hill, about 30 seconds apart, on the morning of the 11th of May, 1945. Half a minute. It cost her the longest burial at sea in the history of the United States Navy. Two aircraft, one morning, and she never fought again. That much everyone agrees on. Here is what a whole tier of the tellings you will find today gets wrong. The two aircraft did different things. One of them killed the pilots. The other one killed the admiral's staff. And in a great many of the accounts you can find today, those two aircraft are the wrong way round. There is a document that settles it. It is not the task force report that usually gets cited, because that report does not distinguish between the two aircraft at all. It is the ship's own history, written by her own officers in 1945, stamped confidential, and sitting in public view ever since. It says exactly which aircraft did what and in what order. It settles two more things the retelling has wrong, including one about a name. And it explains something the Navy has never entirely settled to this day, which is how many men she lost. So let us go and read it. If you want more files like this one, taken from the record rather than from the retelling, subscribe. That is the only time I will ask. At 10 o'clock that morning, she is the most important ship in the Pacific, because Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher is aboard her, running the fast carrier task force from her flag country, the Admiral's own compartments inside the island. She has been at sea and fighting for 58 consecutive days. Iwo Jima, Tokyo, Kure Harbor, Kyushu, and now Okinawa. Her flight deck is crowded. 34 aircraft are parked aft, fueled, armed and manned, engines already turning, waiting to launch. A carrier is at her most dangerous to herself in exactly this condition, and every man aboard knows it. The morning has been quiet, there is low broken cloud, and on the radar, the Japanese aircraft are mixed in with her own, coming back from Okinawa. The first aircraft comes out of that cloud in a steep dive off her starboard quarter. The pilot is a Japanese naval aviator named Yasunori Seizo. He releases his bomb and then he flies his aircraft into the ship. Follow the bomb first, because the bomb is the thing the accounts confuse. It goes through the wooden flight deck. It continues down through the gallery deck below, into the hangar bay, and out through the port side of the ship. And it explodes in the air about 20 feet clear of the hull. It does not go off inside her. That is luck, and it is very nearly the only luck she gets all morning. The aircraft is a different matter. It strikes the flight deck and slides aft, towards the stern, into those 34 parked, fueled, armed aeroplanes, and it takes them with it. Some go over the side. The rest catch, and their fuel runs across the deck, and their ordnance begins to cook off. So at 10:05, Bunker Hill has a gasoline fire aft, feeding on her own aircraft and her own bombs. 30 seconds later, the second aircraft arrives. The Navy's historians put barely 30 seconds between them. Short enough that the general alarm never finishes sounding. Short enough that the men already running towards the first fire have no idea a second aircraft is coming. Its pilot is Ensign Kiyoshi Ogawa. He drops his bomb into the flight deck by the island, and this one does not pass through and out. It goes off inside the gallery deck, and the gallery deck under the island is where the ready rooms are. A ready room is the compartment where a squadron's pilots sit between missions, waiting to be told to go. It is the most ordinary room on a warship, and on the morning of the 11th of May, it is full. Fighting Squadron 84 lost 22 men, 19 officers and 3 enlisted. They were found afterwards in the passageway outside the ready room, stacked like cordwood. They had got out of their seats. They never got out of the passage. Ogawa's aircraft, having released the bomb, crashes into the base of the island structure. A wing and the engine carry on through the flag office. Mitcher is a few feet away. So is his chief of staff, a captain named Ali Burke. Both of them live. Now hold those two aircraft side by side. This is the correction. The first aircraft's bomb went through the ship and exploded outside her. The first aircraft's airframe started the fire aft. The second aircraft's bomb went off inside the ship, amidships, in the ready rooms, and killed the pilot. The second aircraft's airframe hit the island and killed the admiral's people. 2 aircraft, 2 entirely different kinds of killing, 30 seconds apart. Reverse them, and you have the wrong men dying in the wrong compartments for the wrong reason. That is what a large part of the internet's version of this attack now says. It is not a minority reading of a murky record. It has no source behind it at all. The larger and more careful treatments have the order right. While we are in the ship's own paperwork, one more detail that has quietly flipped. Her 1945 history identifies the second attacker by its Allied code name, a Judy. Every modern account calls it a Zeke instead, and gives the Judy to a third aircraft that came later. The modern Navy accounts make it a 0, and so does the Japanese side. The unit that flew this mission flew zeros, which means the men at the guns misidentified an aircraft that was 30 seconds from killing them, and wrote it down that way, and it stayed written down for 80 years. 13 or 14 of Mitch's staff died in the flag spaces. His own report says 13. The Navy's historians say 14. Mitch himself survived and shifted his flag to the carrier Enterprise that afternoon. 3 days later, at 7:01 in the morning on the 14th of May, a kamikaze put Enterprise out of the war as well. 2 flagships shot out from under him inside 4 days, 3 ships in 5. On the 11th, none of that has happened yet. There is a burning ship, and the question of the morning is whether she comes home at all. Water is on the fire within 3 minutes. Hold on to that number, because everything that follows comes out of it. 3 minutes. On a ship where the alarm never finished, where a bomb has just gone off amidships, and a wall of burning gasoline is moving aft. Hoses are charged and men are on them inside 3 minutes. Then, somewhere in the first confusion, an order goes out over the ship's announcing system for the men aft to abandon ship. It is a local order. It is meant for the men who are standing in the fire. But a ship at that moment is a very poor place to hear anything precisely, and it does not stay local. Some men leave stations that were never in danger. Some refuse to go. A great many never hear it at all. Down in the engineering spaces, Lieutenant Commander Joseph Carmichael, the chief engineer, hears from his own men that the captain has ordered the ship abandoned. He does not act on it. He waits a full 30 minutes to hear it from the captain directly. When it becomes clear the order has been misheard and carried too far, he rescinds it for his department. He tells his engineers to stay at their posts. The captain, incidentally, was George Seitz of Rochester, New York. Some tellings called him Gene. His name was George. Below the waterline, in the dark, with the ship on fire above them and her own bombs going off, Carmichael is telling 500 men to stay where they are. He was right. Keeping the boilers lit kept pressure in the fire mains. And without pressure in the fire mains, there is no firefighting at all, and the ship is lost. 3 minutes to get water on the fire. The rest of the day was about keeping it there, and that was decided below the waterline. He was also, for some of them, signing something very close to a death warrant. His department lost 125 men out of 500. One of the men who stayed was an electrician's mate named Norman Lasman. He held his station alone for 19 hours. 19 hours. At the end of it, he passed out and woke on the flight deck, laid out among the dead. Norman Lasman called Carmichael the hero of his life. Carmichael got the Navy Cross for that morning. So did 2 other officers. And this is where the field gets his job wrong. Look up Joseph Carmichael today, and several of the tellings now circulating have promoted him to executive officer, handed him another man's job, and given him credit for the firefighting. He is entirely real. His citation exists, and the Navy's own historians quote it word for word. But the executive officer was Commander Howell Dyson, wounded early, who led firefighting parties until he collapsed. The damage control officer was Commander Shane King, whose parties fought the fires and the flooding below the waterline as she went over onto a starboard list. He is the third man the field leaves out of this story entirely. 3 men, 3 different jobs, 3 Navy crosses, compressed into 1 man standing in the wrong place. And here is the part the heroic version leaves out entirely. The Navy's own historians record that at least 1 officer was afterwards court-martialed for leaving his men to save himself. That happened on the same deck, in the same hours, as the 3 Navy crosses. Both things are true. The light cruiser Wilkes-Barre comes hard alongside, close enough to put her own hoses onto Bunker Hill's hull, and takes wounded off across the gap. 3 destroyers named English, Stemble and the Sullivans work the water alongside her. About 300 men go into the sea that morning, some blown there, some driven there by the fire, and the destroyers go and pick them out of it. By about 3 in the afternoon, the fires are under control, and Wilkes-Barre casts off. At 25 past 10, with the ship still burning, a 3rd aircraft had come in low and fast, driving straight at her. The starboard 40mm battery shot it down half a mile out. Those were the last shots Bunker Hill ever fired at an enemy aircraft. Most of the men who died on Bunker Hill were not killed by the fire itself. Mitcher's own report to the fleet puts it in 5 words. The casualties, mainly through asphyxiation. They died in compartments below and inside the fire, where the smoke reached them and the air did not, and many of them were found long afterwards, in places that could not be opened while she was still burning. Then there is the counting, and the number you will see quoted most often, which has nothing underneath it. 389. It is everywhere. It comes from nowhere. It is arithmetic left over from a reference entry that has since been superseded, and it has simply been copied forward. The real figures move, and they move for a reason. On the 12th, 352 men are buried at sea. In his June report, Mitcher is still on 352 killed, plus 52 missing. The figure the Naval History and Heritage Command uses today is 393. Its own director puts it at 396, counting the 43 never found and the 13 who died of their wounds aboard the cruiser. Every one of those is the same disaster, counted at a different moment. The ship's history explains the climb in a single line. The early figure proved far too low when compartments in the gallery deck that had previously been inaccessible were opened. They were still finding them. The burial begins at 3 minutes past noon on the 12th of May and runs until about 8 that evening. 352 men. 24 of them go into the sea with no name on them at all. It is the longest burial at sea in the history of the United States Navy. 8 hours, and that is with 3 burial chutes and 3 stretchers going at once, 6 men over the side at a time. They rigged the extra 3 to make it shorter. She reached the fleet anchorage at Ulithi, then Pearl Harbor, then the yard at Bremerton, under her own power the whole way. Under her own power, which is Carmichael's boilers and the 125 men who stayed with them. She never returned to combat. When Japan surrendered, she still had about a month of repairs in front of her. But there is one more document in this story, out of the record rather than the retelling, and it is not a Navy document at all. After the attack, a salvage diver aboard Bunker Hill named Robert Schock volunteered to go down into the wreck of the 2nd aircraft. It was half awash inside the ship. There were live wires in the water. He found Ogawa still in the cockpit, dead. And Schock took things out of that cockpit. A name tag off the flight suit, a letter, photographs, a buckle from a parachute harness, a watch smashed. The big aviator's watch Japanese pilots wore around the neck. He brought them home to Kansas. They went into a cardboard box in his garage along with his own Purple Heart, and they stayed in that box for the rest of his life. Robert Schoch died in November of 2000, aged 72. On the 27th of March 2001, in a restaurant in San Francisco, Robert Schoch's grandson Dax Berg put the name tag, the letter, and the photographs into the hands of Kiyoshi Ogawa's family. His grandniece Yoko Ogawa was there. So was a man named Masao Kunimine, who had been at college with Ogawa before the war, and who was the only person in that room who had actually known him. 56 years. From a flooded compartment off Okinawa to a table in San Francisco. Here is the last thing, and it is the reason the name tag matters. We know who the second pilot was because of what Schoch took out of that cockpit. Not from a Japanese record recovered after the war, from a name tag cut off a flight suit, a letter, and some photographs carried home in a box by the man who found the body and translated 56 years later. The United States Navy counted the men on that ship again and again, and it still does not entirely agree with itself. 352, 393, 396. 24 of them went into the water with nothing on them to say who they were. The one name that anybody carried home from that morning, in a cardboard box in a Kansas garage, belonged to the man who flew into her.